300 men were about to die in Echo Valley. Captain Ryan Parker knew at the moment the first shots cracked across the morning air. His convoy of vehicles stretched through the narrow passage like exposed vertebrae, suddenly vulnerable from every direction. "Firebase, this is Alpha Actual," he transmitted, voice steady, despite the knowledge forming in his gut. "We are taking fire from multiple elevated positions, heavy weapons and coordinated units." The response from headquarters was immediate, but not what he needed to hear. "Alpha Actual, closest air assets are 40 minutes out. Maintain defensive posture." 40 minutes. Parker watched a transport vehicle erupt in flames 200 yards ahead, men spilling out as they sought any cover in the exposed terrain. By his rapid calculation, in 40 minutes, they would all be dead. The reality sank in as bullets stitched the ground near his feet. His SEAL team, the most elite fighting force in the world, had walked straight into a trap. At Fort Liberty Military Base, 60 miles south, Olivia Lawson's hands moved with practiced precision. The rifle before her lay disassembled on a clean cloth spread across her lap. Each component received methodical attention as she cleaned carbon from the bolt, inspected the firing pin, and ran a bore snake through the barrel of her M40A6 sniper rifle. At 5'5", with a slim build, Olivia didn't match the typical image of a Marine combat specialist. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her movements efficient without wasted motion. The only personal touch was a small compass, hanging on a chain around her neck, tucked beneath her collar. She held the barrel up to the light streaming through the armory window. "Clear." Olivia made a notation in the small green notebook she kept in her cargo pocket. Temperature 96 degree, humidity 18%, wind from northwest at 12 millimoles, barrel condition optimal. The notebook contained 3 years of data. Ballistic drop tables calculated by hand. Wind patterns at different elevations across the region. Ammunition performance variations by lot number and temperature. It looked like a meteorology journal written by someone with obsessive-compulsive disorder. In reality, it was a doctoral thesis on how to put a bullet exactly where it needed to be under any condition the Arizona desert could produce. Staff Sergeant James Hamilton appeared in the doorway, momentarily blocking the light. He was everything Olivia wasn't. 6'2", built like he bench-pressed Humvees for fun, with the easy confidence of someone who had never been told he didn't belong. "Briefing in 10, he said, tone suggesting he was doing her a favor. "Colonel wants everyone in the JOCC." "Acknowledged," Olivia replied, reassembling her rifle with practiced efficiency. Hamilton leaned against the doorframe. "Heard they finally greenlit the Echo Valley operation. Big sweep, full battalion, going to be a turkey shoot." "Valley is a natural kill zone," Olivia observed, not looking up from her work. "Narrow approaches, elevated positions on both flanks, limited air support lanes. Whoever planned this terrain study knew what they were doing." Hamilton snorted. "That's why we're bringing 300 shooters. Overwhelm any resistance, secure the camp, back for dinner." Simple. Simple usually means someone missed something. And that's why you're cleaning rifles while operators are planning real missions. 3 years at Fort Liberty had taught her that arguing only made things worse. Better to let them underestimate her. Let them think she was just checking boxes and filling quotas. The Joint Operations Command Center occupied the largest climate-controlled building on base. Maps covered every wall. Topographical imagery, satellite feeds, drone footage cycling through different sectors. The room smelled like burned coffee and the particular kind of sweat that came from people making decisions that got other people killed. Colonel Marcus Reed stood at the front, a pointer in his hand, his uniform somehow still looking pressed despite the heat. He was career military in the worst way, more politician than warrior, more concerned with his fitness report than the mission. But he wore the rank, which meant his bad ideas carried the weight of orders. 23 Marines and Navy personnel filled the folding chairs. Olivia took a seat in the back corner, notebook open on her lap, pen ready. Hamilton sat front row, naturally, flanked by other scout snipers who'd actually been allowed to do their jobs. "Gentlemen," Reed began, then caught himself, "and Sergeant Lawson, we have operational approval for the Echo Valley sweep. Intelligence confirms a significant terrorist training camp supplying insurgent operations throughout the region." He gestured to the main display showing a three-dimensional topographical map. The terrain looked like God had taken two mountain ranges and pressed them together, leaving a narrow corridor between them. The valley floor was maybe 800 meters wide at its broadest point, pinching down to 200 meters at the northern and southern entrances. Olivia studied the map with professional focus. The elevated positions overlooking the valley offered perfect firing positions with interlocking fields of fire. Limited cover on the valley floor. Anyone moving through that terrain would be exposed to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. She raised her hand. Reed acknowledged her with visible reluctance. "Sir, those ridgelines provide optimal ambush positions. If hostile forces have established prepared positions on the high ground, our forces would be caught in a crossfire with limited maneuverability. The northern and southern entrances create natural choke points." The room fell quiet. Several officers turned to look at her. Hamilton rolled his eyes. Reed's jaw tightened. "Thank you for that assessment, Sergeant. However, intelligence has thoroughly vetted this operation. The terrorist camp is confirmed. The tactical advantages of neutralizing this threat outweigh hypothetical concerns about terrain. With respect, sir, nothing hypothetical about a natural kill zone." "Sergeant Lawson," Reed interrupted, voice sharp, "your expertise is noted. However, operational planning is above your pay grade." Major Lisa Hayes, the intelligence officer, glanced at Olivia with an expression that might have been sympathy. Olivia closed her notebook. "Understood, sir." After the briefing, she returned to her barracks room. The space was barely large enough for a cot, a footlocker, and a small desk. Photos on the wall showed her father in desert camouflage from Operation Iraqi Freedom. Captain Thomas Lawson, 5th Special Forces Group. Her mother in Army medical uniform, Lieutenant Sarah Lawson, 28th Combat Support Hospital. Both gone now. Her father to an IED in Iraq when she was 16. Her mother to cancer 2 years later. On her desk sat her father's sniper qualification badge, inscribed with words he'd repeated often. "Never leave anyone behind." Olivia opened her laptop and pulled up the operational maps for Echo Valley, studying the terrain with the kind of focus usually reserved for chess grandmasters analyzing endgames. The valley ran northeast to southwest, approximately 12 kilometers long. The ridgelines averaged 900 meters elevation above the valley floor. If she were planning an ambush, she'd position heavy weapons on the ridgelines, coordinate firing positions to create interlocking fields of fire. Wait until the enemy force was fully committed to the valley floor, then initiate contact simultaneously from multiple positions. Classic L-shaped ambush, scaled up to battalion size. Someone was setting up 300 SEALs to die. Dawn came fast in Arizona. Olivia stood outside the Joint Operations Center watching the convoy assemble. 30 vehicles, 300 SEALs, checking weapons, securing equipment, going through pre-mission rituals. Captain Ryan Parker moved among his men with the easy confidence of a leader who'd earned respect through competence rather than rank. He was young for a captain, maybe 28, but his eyes had that 1,000-yard stare that came from seeing enough combat to understand the difference between confidence and arrogance. Parker noticed her watching and walked over. "Sergeant Lawson, right? You were at the briefing yesterday. Had some concerns about the terrain." Olivia hesitated, then decided there was nothing to lose. "The valley is a natural ambush point, sir. Anyone holding the high ground has overwhelming tactical advantage. Parker studied her face, seeming to weigh her assessment rather than dismissing it outright. You've studied the terrain. I've analyzed every topographical feature, sir. I keep detailed notes on all operational areas within our AO. Why? The question caught her off guard. Most officers didn't ask why she did things. Because nobody else seems to be doing it. Sir? The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. You're the sniper who topped the marksmanship course last year, right? Set a new base record. Yes, sir. But they keep me on base doing comm support. Parker glanced back at his men, then at her again. Sometimes the people who see the clearest are the ones nobody's looking at. I'll keep your assessment in mind, Sergeant. He walked back to his team, leaving Olivia with the strange sensation of having been actually heard for the first time in 3 years. The convoy rolled out at 6:20 hours. Olivia monitored communications from inside the geox where banks of radios and computer displays tracked the operation in real time. Drone feeds showed the vehicles moving in disciplined formation, headlights cutting through dust that hung in the air like fog. At 0647 hours, the lead elements entered Echo Valley. For 12 minutes, nothing happened. The SEALs established their initial positions, beginning the methodical sweep northward. Then the world exploded. Contact left! Contact left! Heavy weapons fire from the western ridge. RPGs incoming. Echo Valley erupted into a perfect ambush. Every elevated position Olivia had identified as a threat was now pouring fire down into the valley. Machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, mortars. The SEALs were caught in exactly the kill zone she'd warned about. The geoc erupted into controlled chaos. Officers shouting into radios, computer displays updating casualty reports, drone feeds showing the convoy scattered across the valley floor, vehicles burning, SEALs scrambling for whatever cover they could find. Colonel Reed's face had gone pale. Get air support on those ridge positions now. Sir, friendlies are within 200 meters of enemy positions. We can't authorize strikes within safety parameters. Then get them to create separation. They can't move, sir. They're pinned down. Captain Parker's voice came through the command channel, remarkably calm despite the chaos audible in the background. Firebase, this is Alpha Actual. We have sustained casualties, multiple vehicles disabled. Enemy forces have prepared positions with interlocking fields of fire. We cannot establish sufficient separation for air support. Alpha Actual, maintain defensive positions. Air support inbound. Negative, Firebase. Separation is not tactically feasible. We're in a kill zone. Repeat, we are in a kill zone. The next 4 hours became a nightmare of incremental disaster. The SEALs fought with everything they had, but the tactical mathematics were brutally simple. 300 men with limited cover against enemy forces occupying prepared positions on high ground. At 11:43 hours, General Frank Howard arrived at the JOCC. He studied the tactical display for exactly 90 seconds before making his assessment. Colonel, what's our casualty count? 43 confirmed wounded, 12 KIA. Numbers are approximate due to ongoing contact. Ammunition status critical. The general turned to face the entire operations center. We need to discuss tactical withdrawal. The room fell silent. Even the radio chatter seemed to diminish. Sir, Reed's voice cracked slightly. We have 300 men in an untenable position with no viable extraction route. Attempting reinforcement puts additional forces at risk. Olivia felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd heard euphemisms before. Damage limitation. Acceptable losses. Strategic reassessment. All the careful language commanders used when they were about to abandon their own people. General, she said, standing, there are alternatives. Every officer in the room turned to look at her. Reed's expression promised career-ending consequences. Sergeant Lawson, this discussion is counter-sniper operations, Olivia interrupted. The enemy is coordinating from command positions on the ridgelines. Systematic elimination of key personnel and heavy weapons positions would disrupt their fire coordination. We don't have sniper assets in position, Reed snapped. You have me. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. You want to single-handedly counter an entire ambush force? Reed's voice dripped with contempt. This is exactly why you're not cleared for combat operations. Delusions of competence. Olivia held his gaze. I can make the shots, sir. I know that terrain. I've calculated the ballistics for every elevation in that valley. Absolutely not, Reed said flatly. How long would it take you to reach an effective position? Howard asked, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity. 4 hours to reach Eagle Peak. Elevation gives me clear sight lines across the entire valley. Range to targets between 800 and 3,000 meters depending on position. Howard studied her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the tactical display, where casualty reports continued to accumulate. No, he said finally. We follow protocol. Prepare tactical withdrawal plans. Sir, that's an order, Sergeant Lawson. Return to your station. Reed moved close to her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. If you so much as think about going rogue, I will have you arrested, court-martialed, and imprisoned. Do you understand me? Yes, sir, she replied, her voice flat. Good. Now get back to your station and stay out of the way while adults make decisions. Olivia watched the tactical display where red indicators marked casualties among men who were being abandoned because their commanders had made mistakes and refused to let anyone fix them. The radio crackled with Captain Parker's voice, strain finally breaking through his professional composure. Firebase, ammunition critical, casualties mounting, we need extraction now. Alpha Actual, extraction assets are being coordinated. Maintain position. Help is coming. But everyone in the JOCC knew it was a lie. No help was coming. Just eventually, a recovery team to collect bodies and dog tags. 3 years of being dismissed. 3 years of being told she wasn't good enough. 3 years of keeping her head down and following orders that made no sense. But orders that meant letting 300 men die weren't orders. They were war crimes wrapped in professional courtesy. She stood, closed her notebook, and walked toward the door. Sergeant Lawson, where are you going? Lieutenant Walker called after her. Bathroom, sir, she replied without breaking stride. She walked directly to the armory. Sergeant First Class Park was on duty, reading a paperback. Need to sign out my rifle, she said. Range qualification. Park barely looked up. Little hot for range time. Best time to train is when it's hardest. He shrugged and pushed the sign-out sheet across the desk. Olivia filled it out with her usual neat handwriting. Equipment, M40A6 rifle, ammunition, rangefinder, communication equipment, purpose, marksmanship qualification. Everything by the book, right up until the moment she walked past the range and headed for the motor pool instead. A Humvee sat idling near the gate, prepared for a supply run to an outpost 15 kilometers north. Corporal Fletcher was checking the vehicle's fluid levels. Change of plans, Corporal, Olivia said, with calm authority she absolutely didn't have. Need transport to Overwatch Post. Sentinel priority tasking. Fletcher looked uncertain. Ma'am, I don't have orders for... Orders are being processed. This is time-sensitive communications equipment repair. Fletcher was young, maybe 22, and clearly uncomfortable questioning a staff sergeant's direct instruction. Yes, ma'am. When do we depart? Now. The Humvee rolled through the gate after a cursory check from the guard. 20 minutes outside the wire, she keyed the vehicle's communication system. Drop me at the Eastern Trail Junction. Return to base and report equipment delivery to Overwatch Post Sentinel complete. Fletcher's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Ma'am, there's no equipment in this vehicle. I know? And you're not going to Sentinel? No, I'm not. The corporal was silent for a long moment. Ma'am, if you're doing what I think you're doing, I should probably stop you. You should, Olivia agreed. But you won't, because you've been listening to the radio traffic from Echo Valley. And you know 300 SEALs are dying while Command writes their eulogies. Fletcher's jaw worked. He was young but not stupid. Young enough to still believe the system worked. Old enough to recognize when it failed catastrophically. My dad served with your father in Iraq, he said finally. Captain Lawson saved his life during an ambush outside Fallujah. Olivia said nothing. I didn't see nothing, he continued. Equipment got delivered. You stayed at Sentinel for communications relay work. Appreciate it, Corporal. Don't thank me yet, ma'am. Thank me if you make it back. The Humvee slowed at a barely visible trail junction where the road split. Olivia grabbed her equipment, rifle, ammunition, rangefinder, radio, 3 days of rations she probably wouldn't need, and her notebook wrapped in waterproof plastic. Everything she'd need to either save 300 men or die trying. She settled her pack across her shoulders. 12 kilometers, most of it vertical. Jesus, you sure about this? No, she said, but I'm doing it anyway. She started walking. The first hour was deceptive. The trail followed a relatively gentle grade through terrain that looked like Mars after a particularly bad century. Reddish rocks, sparse vegetation, the sun hammering down with heat that made sweat evaporate before it could bead on skin. Olivia moved with measured pace, conserving energy, breathing rhythmically. Her father had taught her mountain movement during hunting trips in Colorado when she was 13. Small steps. Don't fight the terrain. Let your body find its rhythm, and trust that consistency beats speed every time. By the second hour, the trail had stopped being gentle and started being honest. The grade steepened until she was using hands to assist the climb, pulling herself up rock faces. Her rifle hung across her back, 48 inches of precision equipment that felt like it gained a pound every 100 meters of elevation. She paused at a small outcropping, drinking water from her camelback, checking her map against the terrain features surrounding her. The radio clipped to her vest crackled with traffic from Echo Valley. She'd kept it on despite the risk of detection because she needed to know the current state of the situation. Captain Parker's voice had lost its earlier composure. Fire base, ammunition at 15%, casualties at 62. We're consolidating defensive positions, but taking sustained fire from multiple vectors. Enemy forces are coordinating. These are not random insurgents. These are trained military operators. Olivia kept climbing. 6 hours, 62 casualties. The numbers painted a picture of men dying incrementally while their commanders cycled through contingency plans that all involved acceptable losses. At hour 3, the terrain transitioned from merely difficult to actively hostile. The trail disappeared entirely, forcing her to navigate by compass bearing and terrain association. Loose gravel slid beneath her boots with every step. The air thinned noticeably, each breath feeling slightly insufficient. At 3,800 feet elevation, she encountered the first technical obstacle. A rock face rose vertical for 30 feet, offering handholds that looked designed by someone who hated climbers. No way around it that wouldn't add hours to her timeline. She secured her rifle across her pack, double-checking the retention straps. Losing her weapon this high up would transform the entire operation from difficult to impossible. Then she started climbing hand over hand. Test each hold before trusting it with full body weight. Don't look down. Don't think about falling. Just focus on the next handhold, the next foothold, the next increment of progress. Halfway up, her right boot slipped on a patch of loose stone. For one heart-stopping moment, she hung by her hands alone, legs scrambling for purchase against smooth rock. Her fingers burned, her shoulders screamed. Then her boot found a tiny ledge and she pressed upward, redistributing weight, finding stability. She hung there for 10 seconds, breathing hard, letting adrenaline cycle through and then dissipate. Panic killed climbers faster than gravity. Control the fear. Use it for focus. Keep moving. 2 minutes later, she pulled herself over the top of the rock face, rolling onto flat ground, her muscles trembling from exertion. She allowed herself 30 seconds of rest, then stood and continued hiking. At hour 4, she reached an elevation where weather patterns changed noticeably. Wind that had been minimal at lower elevations now gusted unpredictably, carrying the sharp cold that came from air masses flowing down from peaks that never fully lost their snow. The temperature had dropped from 96 dirks at base to maybe 65 dirks at her current position. The radio traffic had grown worse. Master Sergeant Blackwood's voice, older and graveled with experience, carried tones Olivia recognized from her father's old combat recordings. The sound of men who had accepted probable death, but refused to quit fighting. "We've got wounded who need medevac within 2 hours or they're gone. I'm telling you straight, we're not going to make it through tonight without extraction or reinforcement." Copy that. Command is evaluating options. Command has been evaluating options since breakfast. These men need action, not evaluation. Olivia pushed harder, ignoring the burning in her legs and the thin air that made every breath feel insufficient. Blackwood was right. Evaluation time had expired 6 hours ago. Through her radio, she caught fragments of encrypted communication she shouldn't have been able to monitor. A voice speaking in accented but perfect English. "All units maintain fire discipline. These Americans are elite forces. Do not waste ammunition on speculative shots." The voice had command presence, the natural authority that came from years of experience and absolute confidence. This wasn't some militia leader. This was military, professional, trained. Later transmissions confirmed her assessment. Marcus Westfield, former Army Special Forces captain, turned against his former allies after his family was killed in a mistaken FBI raid on his home 3 years ago. Intelligence reports described him as tactically brilliant and personally motivated by grief transformed into calculated vengeance. Westfield had been a captain in Special Forces, trained at Fort Bragg, fluent in multiple languages, skilled in American military doctrine. He understood U.S. tactics because he'd been taught them. That made him predictable in some ways, dangerous in others. At hour 5, she finally saw Eagle Peak emerging from the terrain ahead. The formation jutted from the ridgeline like a broken tooth, offering exactly what she needed: elevation, clear sightlines across Echo Valley, and natural cover that would conceal her position from observation. She covered the final kilometer in 40 minutes, her body's screaming protest ignored through sheer determination. The rock face required technical climbing for the last 100 feet. Olivia moved carefully, testing each handhold, placing her feet with precision born from knowing that mistakes this high came with terminal consequences. When she finally reached her destination, she allowed herself 2 minutes of rest, drinking water and eating an energy bar. Then she began setting up her firing platform. The M40A6 came off her back like an old friend. She'd carried this specific weapon for 3 years, knew its quirks and preferences, understood exactly how it performed under varying conditions. The rifle wasn't just equipment, it was an extension of her will. She deployed a small shooting mat, establishing a stable platform, retrieved her rangefinder, and began systematic survey of the valley below. Through the optics, Echo Valley revealed itself in horrifying detail. Burning vehicles scattered across the valley floor. SEALs clustered in defensive positions wherever terrain offered minimal cover. Enemy forces occupied prepared positions along both ridgelines, their muzzle flashes visible even in afternoon sunlight. Olivia began mapping targets methodically. Heavy weapons positions first, then command elements, then precision shooters. Each target received a notation in her book. Range, elevation differential, wind compensation required, priority ranking. She keyed her radio to the command frequency the SEALs were using. Any station, any station. This is Sierra Whiskey. I have overwatch position with clear sight lines across your operational area. Silence answered her. Then Captain Parker's voice, cautious and confused. Sierra Whiskey, authenticate your unit and authorization. Olivia hesitated. Admitting she was operating without authorization would trigger immediate orders to cease operations. But lying to friendly forces violated protocols that actually mattered. Alpha Actual, I'm a Marine Scout sniper operating without command approval. I have the skills, position, and ammunition to provide effective counter-sniper operations. Your call whether you want my help. Another silence. Parker was undoubtedly processing implications. Unauthorized operator, potential friendly fire liability, desperation that made questionable assistance look attractive. Sierra Whiskey, what's your maximum effective range? Validated to 3,200 meters. Can extend under favorable conditions. Jesus Christ, Parker's voice carried equal parts disbelief and desperate hope. Can you identify enemy command positions? Affirmative. I've mapped 17 priority targets, including heavy weapons and coordination elements. Standing by for your authorization. Parker's decision took maybe 5 seconds. When you're dying slowly in a kill zone, unauthorized help beats authorized abandonment every time. Sierra Whiskey, you are authorized to engage targets of opportunity. Friendlies are marked by infrared strobes. Everything else is hostile. Don't hit our people. Understood. Beginning engagement. Olivia settled into her firing position, her body conforming to the stock, her eye finding the scope's exit pupil with practiced ease. Through magnified optics, the valley floor jumped into sharp focus. She identified her first target, a heavy machine gun position on the eastern ridge that had been systematically suppressing a SEAL defensive position for hours. Range, 1847 meters. Wind, gusting 12 cm from the northwest. Elevation differential, 892 meters. Temperature, 68 degrees and dropping. She made her calculations, adjusting her scope's turrets with precise clicks that moved her point of impact in predictable increments. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat became metronome regular. The world narrowed to the space between her crosshairs and the target. She found the moment between heartbeats where her body became perfectly still, then pressed the trigger with steady pressure. The rifle spoke with suppressed authority. Through the scope, she watched the machine gunner collapse. His assistant looked around in confusion, trying to identify the threat. Olivia cycled her bolt, chambered another round, adjusted for the new target's position, and fired again. 2 shots, 2 casualties. The machine gun position went silent. She shifted aim to a mortar team on the western ridge, calculating the new firing solution. Range, 2,183 meters. Different wind pattern on the western slope. Adjust for Coriolis effect at this range. Minor correction for ammunition law temperature. 2 more shots. The mortar team stopped firing. Olivia continued working through her priority target list with methodical efficiency. Each shot calculated, each target selected for maximum disruption of enemy coordination. She wasn't trying to kill everyone. She was trying to break the command structure that was holding the ambush together. In the valley below, the tactical situation began shifting. The precision fire eliminating key positions created confusion among enemy forces. Radio intercepts showed their coordination degrading. Units reporting unknown sniper, Casualties among leadership elements. Orders becoming uncertain. Captain Parker's voice came through her radio, carrying new energy. Sierra Whiskey. I don't know who you are, but you just gave us breathing room. Enemy fire is disrupting. We're reorganizing defensive positions. Copy that, Alpha Actual. Continuing engagement. Break contact when possible and move toward the southern choke point. I can provide overwatch during movement. Understood. All elements begin phased withdrawal towards southern exit. Stay spread. Use available cover. Move on Sierra Whiskey's covering fire. At Fort Liberty, the Joint Operations Center had erupted into chaos of a different kind. Lieutenant Walker stared at the tactical display where enemy positions were being systematically neutralized by precision fire from an unidentified source. "Who the hell is shooting?" Colonel Reed demanded, his face flushed with anger and confusion. Major Hayes studied the display. Long-range precision fire, single shooter, engaging from elevated position east of the valley. Whoever it is knows exactly what they're doing. I want identification now. An analyst pulled up drone footage, rewinding to catch thermal signature from the suspected shooting position. The image was grainy at extreme range, but clear enough to show a single figure occupying Eagle Peak. Single operator, the analyst reported, appears to be providing overwatch for Alpha Team's withdrawal attempt. Reed's face went from flush to pale. Check personnel roster. Who's unaccounted for? Walker pulled up the duty log, his expression shifting to something like horror. Sir, Staff Sergeant Lawson signed out her rifle 5 hours ago. Listed purpose was range qualification. She never returned. The silence in the JOCC carried weight measured in career-ending implications. That's impossible, Reed said, his voice hollow. She can't reach that position in 5 hours. She can't make those shots. She's saving 300 SEALs, Major Hayes interrupted, her tone carrying steel. Sir, we need to support her operation, not question it. Reed rounded on her. She's operating without authorization. She's directly violated orders. When this is over, Hayes countered, you'll have to explain why you wanted to court-martial the Marine who saved an entire battalion after you ordered them abandoned. On Eagle Peak, Olivia was unaware of the command-level chaos she'd triggered. Her world had narrowed to scope, target, calculation, shot. She'd fired 43 rounds, achieving 41 confirmed eliminations and 2 probables. Her ammunition supply was depleting, but the tactical situation was shifting favorably. The SEALs had consolidated into a tighter defensive perimeter, using the disruption she'd created to reposition into more defensible terrain. Casualties had stopped accelerating. Enemy forces were no longer coordinating effectively. But the sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains, and darkness would bring new challenges. Olivia switched to her night vision optics, continuing to provide covering fire as the SEALs executed their withdrawal toward the southern extraction point. Through her scope, she identified movement on the western ridge. Enemy forces repositioning under darkness, attempting to flank the SEAL defensive perimeter. She ranged the target at 1,962 meters. Wind had shifted with the temperature drop, now coming from the northeast at 8 MEPR. She made her adjustments and fired. Through her scope, she watched the point man drop. The unit behind him immediately went to ground, trying to identify the threat. Olivia waited 30 seconds, then eliminated the next visible target. The flanking movement stopped advancing. Westfield's voice came through her intercepted radio channel, the tone measured but clearly frustrated. All positions, new priority. Unknown sniper operating from elevated position east of valley. Locate and eliminate before resuming offensive operations. A pause, then more explicit orders. The sniper is worth more to us alive than dead. I want her captured, interrogated. Then we'll demonstrate what happens to American soldiers who interfere in our operations. Olivia felt cold certainty settle in her gut. They'd identified her as the priority threat. Everything that followed would focus on finding and killing her. She keyed her radio to the SEAL frequency. Alpha Actual, be advised. Enemy forces have shifted priority to locating my position. They're breaking off to neutralize me first. Parker's response was immediate. Can you relocate? Olivia assessed her tactical situation. Moving from Eagle Peak meant abandoning the only position that offered clear sight lines across the entire valley. Negative, alternative positions don't provide adequate coverage. I'll maintain current location and prepare for counter-sniper operations. Sierra Whiskey, they'll bring everything they have against your position once they locate you. Then I better make sure they don't find me until after you're extracted. Olivia began preparing defensive measures. She identified alternate firing positions within her immediate area, calculating how she could shift locations quickly while maintaining overwatch capability. She cached spare ammunition at each position, ensuring she wouldn't be caught without rounds during rapid movement. Through her night vision, she observed enemy forces deploying in patterns that suggested professional counter-sniper protocols. They were establishing observation posts, creating interlocking coverage zones, preparing to methodically search the ridgelines for her position. She continued eliminating high-value targets when they presented themselves. Each shot revealed her approximate location through muzzle signature, even with suppression. But the trade-off was necessary. Buying the SEALs time for extraction meant accepting increased personal risk. Westfield was directing his forces with the calm precision of someone who'd hunted people before. She's moving north along the ridgeline. Cut off the northern approach. Drive her toward the cliff face. No escape routes there. Olivia checked her map, confirming what her memory already told her. 200 meters north, the ridgeline terminated in a vertical drop that fell 800 feet to the valley floor below. Westfield was herding her toward terrain that offered no escape. Standard tactics, predictable, which meant she needed to do something unpredictable. She keyed her radio. Alpha Actual, Sierra Whiskey. I'm being pursued by multiple hostiles. They're attempting to pin me against the northern cliff face. Parker's response was immediate. Sierra Whiskey, what's your position? We can vector air support. Negative. They're too close. Airstrike would put me in the blast radius. Olivia paused, calculating options that all looked bad. I'm going to attempt technical descent on the cliff face. That's insane. You'll die. Better than getting cornered up here. She didn't wait for Parker's response. Time had become a commodity she could no longer afford to spend on debate. Olivia moved quickly toward the cliff edge, using what little time remained before the pursuit closed in. The drop-off appeared suddenly, the ground simply ending in darkness that her night vision rendered as a void of uncertain depth. She'd studied this terrain from satellite imagery, knew the cliff was technical but climbable with proper equipment. Unfortunately, proper equipment was sitting in the armory at Fort Liberty. She secured her rifle across her pack, pulled out her climbing rope, and looked for anchor points. A weathered boulder offered possibilities. She wrapped the rope twice around its base, tested it with her full weight, then committed. The rope uncoiled down the cliff face, disappearing into darkness below. No time to set up proper belay. No time to check the route. Just rope and gravity, and hope that what she couldn't see wouldn't kill her. She backed over the edge, feeding rope through her hands, her boots finding the cliff face. The rock was cold beneath her palms, wind buffeting her like physical blows. Above, she heard the pursuit reach the cliff edge. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, searching. Someone shouted they'd found her rope. Olivia descended faster, accepting risk because staying within rifle range of the cliff top meant certain death. Her hands burned against the rope. A gunshot cracked above, the round winging past her ear close enough that she felt its supersonic shockwave. She dropped the final 20 feet, hitting the slope below hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Above, the flashlight beams searched futilely. She'd bought separation, but only minutes before they found a way down. Olivia gathered her rope and started moving down slope, away from the cliff face. The tactical situation had deteriorated from bad to catastrophic. She was separated from friendly forces, pursued by professional operators, and operating in terrain that offered limited options for either concealment or mobility. Her radio crackled. "Sierra Whiskey, Alpha Actual. We've reached extraction point. Helicopters inbound in 15 minutes. What's your status?" Olivia paused behind a boulder, catching her breath. Assessing her tactical reality. She was at least 3 kilometers from the extraction point with hostile forces between her current position and the SEAL perimeter. "Alpha Actual, I'm separated from your position with hostiles in pursuit. I can't reach extraction in time. You need to get your people out. Don't wait for me." "Negative, Sierra Whiskey. We don't leave people behind." "You're not leaving me. I'm telling you to execute the extraction while you have the window. That's an order." Parker's laugh came through, sharp with exhaustion and something like affection. "Staff Sergeant, I'm a captain. You don't give me orders." "Then accept advice from the person who kept you alive for the last 12 hours. Get your men out. I'll find my own way home." Olivia switched frequencies, monitoring Westfield's command channel. What she heard made her blood run cold. "All elements. The SEALs are withdrawing to southern extraction point. Let them go. The target is the sniper." The tactical equation had shifted again. They weren't trying to kill her. They were trying to capture her. That meant different protocols, different vulnerabilities, different opportunities. It also meant that whatever they had planned for her after capture would make death look attractive by comparison. She moved through the darkness with renewed urgency, heading toward the abandoned village of Granite Falls. Intelligence reports suggested it had been empty since 2020 when border security operations had made the area too dangerous for civilian occupation. She reached the village outskirts 30 minutes later, her body past exhaustion into territory where muscles continued functioning through habit rather than conscious direction. The buildings appeared as dark silhouettes, single-story structures built from local stone, roofs partially collapsed, windows empty of glass or frames. Olivia entered the most intact building, conducting quick clearance to ensure no hostile presence. The interior smelled of dust and abandonment, walls covered in graffiti from various military units that had used the location as temporary shelter. She established position in a corner that offered sightlines to the door while preventing observation from outside. Her body demanded rest that tactical reality couldn't permit. The pursuit would reach this area eventually. A sound outside froze her analysis. Boots on stone. Careful movement. Multiple personnel. Olivia brought her rifle up, controlling her breathing, becoming absolutely still. Through a gap in the partially collapsed doorway, she observed 4 figures moving through the village, searching buildings methodically. Professional clearance protocols, checking corners, covering each other's movement. These weren't militia. These were trained soldiers executing military operations with practiced competence. She had maybe 3 minutes before they reached her building. She edged toward the rear of the building where a window opening provided exit access. Beyond lay an alley between buildings, then open terrain that offered concealment if she could reach it before the search team completed their clearance. She slung her rifle across her front where she could bring it to bear immediately if compromised, then began moving toward the window with glacial slowness. Each step took 5 seconds, her weight distributed carefully to avoid creating sound against stone floor covered with debris. The search team was in the next room now. Flashlight beams cut through gaps in the wall, illuminating dust that hung in air. Voices spoke in English, coordinating their search pattern. Olivia reached the window, paused at the opening to scan the alley beyond. Clear. She began climbing through, her body halfway through the opening when the flashlight beam swept across the room behind her. Someone shouted. Olivia dropped through the window, hit the alley running, automatic fire chasing her with rounds that sparked off stone walls. She vaulted a low wall, rolled, came up moving toward the alley opening, and rough terrain beyond. Behind her, the entire village erupted with activity. Radio transmissions called in her position. Additional forces converged on the area. Flashlights and infrared lasers created a constellation of searching illumination. She ran through darkness that grabbed at her boots and threatened to send her sprawling with every step. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed protest. Ahead, the terrain rose toward a rocky outcropping that might offer defensive position. She climbed with hands and feet, scrambling up slope that would have been challenging in daylight and was nearly impossible in darkness. A round cracked past her head. They were shooting despite Westfield's orders to take her alive. Olivia reached the outcropping, dove behind cover, brought her rifle around. Through her scope, she identified multiple targets converging on her position. They were being aggressive now, using numbers and firepower to overwhelm her capacity to respond. She fired 3 times, dropping 2 hostiles and forcing the others to take cover. Her bolt worked with mechanical precision, chambering rounds, ejecting brass. But she was running out of options measured in ammunition and time. One shooter with limited ammunition couldn't hold off multiple assault elements indefinitely. Her radio crackled with a new voice. Gunnery Sergeant Dalton, her former instructor, now apparently coordinating from Fort Liberty. Frost, this is Ironside. We've been monitoring your situation. Air assets are inbound to your position. Mark your location with infrared strobe. Olivia felt something like relief pierce through the adrenaline and exhaustion. Ironside, I'm in contact with multiple hostiles. Danger close to any airstrike. Understood. This isn't airstrike. This is extraction. Mark your position and be ready to move fast. She pulled her infrared strobe from her vest, activated it, and placed it on the highest point of her position. The device would be invisible to naked eye, but would shine like a beacon to aircraft equipped with night vision. The sound of rotor blades grew audible, coming fast and low. Through the darkness, an MH-60 Blackhawk materialized, flying nap of the earth between terrain features, its pilots executing flight patterns that belonged in video games rather than reality. The helicopter flared over her position, door gunners suppressing hostile forces with machine gun fire. A crew chief appeared in the open door, beckoning urgently. Olivia sprinted from her position as the helicopter hovered 6 feet above ground, too high for safe boarding, but the best they could manage given terrain constraints. She leaped, felt hands grab her gear, pull her aboard. The helicopter banked hard, accelerating away from the outcropping as RPG rounds streaked through the space they'd just vacated. She collapsed on the deck, her body finally acknowledging the punishment of the last 14 hours. Hands checked her for wounds, finding none critical. Someone passed her a bottle of water that she drank like it was salvation in liquid form. Dalton's weathered face appeared above her, his expression carrying equal parts relief and professional assessment. You look like hell, Lawson. Feel worse, she managed between gasps. Good shooting out there. Saved a lot of lives. Broke a lot of rules doing it. Sometimes you have to figure out what's right on your own, Dalton said. And you figured it out just fine. The Blackhawk touched down at Fort Liberty at 0347 hours. Olivia climbed out under her own power, refusing the medic's offered hand, her boots hitting solid ground after 16 hours of operating on mountain terrain. Waiting at the edge of the landing pad stood Colonel Reed, General Howard, Major Hayes, and 2 military police personnel, handcuffs visible on their belts. Olivia walked toward them with her rifle slung across her back, her gait showing the stiffness that came from hours of static shooting positions followed by desperate climbing and running. Dalton fell in beside her, his presence offering moral support that regulations probably didn't permit. "Staff Sergeant Lawson," Reed said, his voice carrying the flat formality of official business. "Surrender your weapon to the armory, then report to the JAG office. You're being placed under investigation for unauthorized absence, disobeying direct orders, and operating outside command authority." Olivia unslung her rifle, feeling its weight leave her shoulders like shedding part of her identity. She handed it to Sergeant Park, who'd appeared from the armory with paperwork already prepared. "Am I under arrest, sir?" she asked, her voice steady despite exhaustion that went deeper than physical. "That determination is pending legal review," Howard interjected before Reed could respond. "For now, you're restricted to base pending investigation." The base hospital smelled like antiseptic and institutional efficiency. A Navy corpsman guided her to an examination room where she was poked, prodded, and assessed with the clinical detachment of military medicine. "Blood pressure elevated, but not critical," the corpsman announced while scribbling notes. "Heart rate settling to normal, mild dehydration, some contusions and abrasions consistent with climbing and rough terrain movement. No significant injuries requiring treatment beyond rest and fluids." "Can I go?" Olivia asked, already standing. "Ma'am, I'd recommend, thanks for your professional opinion. Anything else medically required, or am I cleared?" The corpsman sighed. "Cleared. Try to drink water and sleep. Doctor's orders you'll probably ignore." 3 days passed in bureaucratic limbo. Olivia remained confined to base, her movements restricted to barracks, mess hall, and the medical facility. On the fourth morning, a specialist knocked on her door at 0630 with orders to report to General Howard's office at 0800. Dress uniform required. The general sat behind a desk that managed to look both utilitarian and authoritative. Colonel Reed stood to the left, his expression suggesting he'd swallowed something bitter and was trying not to let it show. Major Hayes occupied a chair against the wall, her poker face revealing nothing. "Staff Sergeant Lawson," Howard said without preamble as she entered and rendered proper salute. "We've completed our review of the Echo Valley incident and your role in it. Sit down." Olivia took the indicated chair, her spine straight despite the formality feeling ridiculous. They were going to court-martial her or decorate her, and either way, she'd have to sit through ceremonial language that turned human decisions into bureaucratic pronouncements. A Navy captain opened a leather folder and began reading. The actions of Staff Sergeant Olivia Lawson on the dates in question represented both exemplary tactical excellence and clear violation of military command authority. Her decision to operate without authorization directly contravened orders from Colonel Reed and departed from established operational protocols. The captain paused, consulting his notes. After extensive consultation with legal counsel, operational commanders, and command authority at CENTCOM level, the following determinations have been reached. Staff Sergeant Lawson will receive a formal letter of reprimand for operating outside command authority and disobeying direct orders. This reprimand will remain in her permanent record and will impact future promotion opportunities. Olivia felt something cold settle in her chest. A letter of reprimand was career death. "However," the captain continued, "in recognition of her extraordinary tactical achievement and demonstrated valor under combat conditions, Staff Sergeant Lawson is also awarded the Navy Cross for heroism in the face of enemy fire." The contradiction was so absurd that Olivia almost laughed. Reprimanded and decorated simultaneously, punished for succeeding outside the system while being celebrated for that same success. Additionally, Howard interjected, "you're being transferred to Quantico effective immediately. You'll serve as an instructor at the Scout Sniper School, teaching advanced techniques to the next generation of Marine marksmen. This removes you from combat rotation while utilizing your demonstrated expertise." Translation: we're neutralizing you as a command problem while pretending it's a promotion. "Do you have anything to say, Sergeant?" Howard asked. Olivia considered her response carefully. She could object to the transparent hypocrisy of punishing and rewarding her simultaneously. She could point out that transferring her to teaching duty was command's way of making her someone else's problem. Instead, she chose simplicity. When do I leave for Quantico, sir? 72 hours. On her final morning at Fort Liberty, Gunnery Sergeant Dalton met her at the airfield, where a C-130 waited to carry her east. Got something for you, he said, handing her a small box wrapped in brown paper. Olivia opened it to find a challenge coin custom minted, showing a rifle scope's crosshairs on one side and the Marine Corps emblem on the other. Around the edge ran text, Eagle Peak, one shot, 300 lives. The SEALs had them made, Dalton explained. Everyone who survived Echo Valley got one. Thought you should have yours before you shipped out. Olivia turned the coin over in her hands, feeling its weight. Dalton, she said quietly, do you think I did the right thing? The old gunny studied her with eyes that had seen decades of combat. I think you made a choice that saved lives when the authorized system had given up. Whether that's right depends on whether you believe orders matter more than results. Dalton put his weathered hand on her shoulder. But here's what I know for certain. 300 families didn't receive casualty notifications because you decided to act instead of following orders that led to unnecessary death. If that's wrong, then I don't understand what right means anymore. The Navy Cross ceremony happened in early spring, a formal affair attended by Marine brass and a surprising number of SEALs who traveled specifically to witness her recognition. She stood at attention while someone read the citation describing her actions in language that made them sound more heroic than they'd felt at the time. Captain Parker attended the ceremony, his arm healed, his uniform bearing new ribbons from subsequent deployments. They shared coffee afterward in the officers' club. How's teaching? Parker asked. Different from doing, but necessary, I suppose. Someone has to train the next generation. Heard you're the most demanding instructor they have. Students either love you or hate you depending on whether they want to actually learn or just get through the course. Olivia shrugged. I teach them what works. Parker smiled. Same old Lawson. Never could do anything the comfortable way. After he left, Olivia sat alone, watching Marines come and go about their business. She'd become part of the furniture here, the instructor with the Navy Cross and the letter of reprimand, the Marine who'd saved 300 SEALs and gotten professionally exiled for it. Some nights when the moon was bright enough, she'd walk the Quantico ranges alone, remembering the Arizona mountains and the choices she'd made there. The challenge coin from the SEALs stayed in her pocket, physical reminder that her actions had meaning beyond personal cost. 300 families didn't lose fathers, sons, husbands, brothers, because she decided orders were negotiable when they meant unnecessary death. That arithmetic mattered more than her comfort or career trajectory. She'd never regret Eagle Peak. She'd never apologize for choosing to save lives over following orders. But she'd carry the weight of it forever. The kills, the defiance, the knowledge that doing the right thing had required becoming someone the institution couldn't tolerate in operational capacity. The cost was understanding that honor sometimes meant violating the very system you'd sworn to serve and living with the contradiction forever after. The story didn't have a neat ending because real stories never did. It just continued day after day, carrying forward the weight and the wisdom and the quiet knowledge that sometimes one person with a rifle and a conscience could change outcomes that entire command structures had written off as inevitable.